everybody always asks me, like, how do you run a successful business? How do you do this? How do you do that? I think the number one thing, like, for not just for me personally, but like for anyone who's successful, I've always had a really, 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 really good work ethic. In my own brain, like, I know I'm not the smartest guy, the this, the that. It's just like nobody's going to outwork me. And I always told myself when I was working at Walmart and I'm twiddling my thumbs and I'm ready to pull my hair out, like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was like, there's no way that if I work as hard as I work for these motherfuckers who don't appreciate me, if I work this hard for myself, it'd be impossible to not be successful. Chase your dreams, boys. That's what I try to tell everybody, man.
Nice. How you been, man?
I live a blessed life, man. I can't complain. I just got back from San Diego. I spent 2 weeks before that up with Brian and Christine up in Washington. They got a school up there that's super successful. I went up there, taught a couple hour seminar. There were like 6 black belts on the mat, 42 people at his gym. It was awesome.
Really?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's way cool, dude.
Yeah,
what were you doing
awesome.
in San Diego?
We went out there for the ADCC for the kids. So they had ADCC, they had adults and kids, but I got a couple kids that Riley and David, we travel all around the country doing jiu-jitsu tournaments. So in my opinion, Atos and the Art of Jiu-Jitsu, they have the best kids team. So we were right there in San Diego. We fought some of their kids. We didn't win, but we had a couple refs decisions didn't go our way. So, but it was awesome, man. San Diego's beautiful this time of year. Nice and warm.
It really is.
Good Mexican food. I had Mexican food every day I was there.
Yeah, my wife is from San Diego, and I lived there for 15 years because I was in the Marines there.
Yeah.
And the food, it's literally like, I joke about it. We go back and I hit In-N-Out, and then I eat sushi and burritos for however long I'm there, and that's all I care about. They're like, oh, you want to go do like this? I'm like, no, if it's not sushi or burritos or In-N-Out, I'm not interested.
Well, what's funny is they flew down on Tuesday. Like, I got to run the gym and all that, so I didn't fly down until Friday. But they were sending me pictures of the beach and SeaWorld and all that. And I'm like, well, where'd you guys been eating? They hadn't had any Mexican food yet for like 3 days. I'm like, you guys are in the motherland. What the hell are you guys doing? How are you going to go to San Diego and not have Mexican food? That don't even make sense.
That's true. It's the best. We literally freeze burritos and bring them home.
From San Diego?
We will go buy like 5 or 6 big burritos, and then we freeze them in our hotel or whatever, and we'll fly them home and throw them in the freezer.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The food there is just unreal.
Keith, I think one of the most incredible things about you, I mean, there's a lot of things about you that I've loved and appreciated. And after I moved out of Utah and we came here to Tennessee and everything like that, it was one of the things that sometimes, you know how you don't recognize how good you've got it when you've got it. I looked back over my relationship with you, and not just from the perspective of like our friendship, but you as a coach, everything when it came to jiu-jitsu, all of that kind of stuff, just being in the sphere around Keith had such a massive impact in my life. And one of the things that I really loved about you was how big of a deal you made, you know, like the fact that you just got back from San Diego to go down there and support some students that were participating, some kids that you've been training. You know what I mean? Like, you travel to all of these competitions. Like, you're such an incredible guy with the way that you show up for the community that you've built there. I just want to give that to you first and foremost, dude. Like,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. But I want to go down the path of like, I want to learn a little bit more about Keith. I know a couple of Keith's stories.
I don't know anything about Keith, right?
So we want to get into a little bit more about Keith and learn a little bit about not just your path in jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, but truthfully, a lot of what we talk about here is like what it's like to be a man and our journey as men and how we've evolved and changed over the course of our life as men. And so take us back to childhood, dude. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What did that early kind of like first 10 years of your life look like?
Yeah.
I was born at Maryville Hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm actually, I was a 420 baby. So I was born April 20th, 1983.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
small section of the human population gets to say that.
Yeah. I'm a 420 baby. So this year, 420 is on Easter. So I already got a meme sent to me of Snoop Dogg dancing with bunny ears on. He's all
doing the crip walk.
Yeah, he's all crip walking. Like when your friends tell you that Easter is on 420, he's all dancing and shit. But
There's a certain part of the Easter meme that can't be good. Like Snoop Dogg, Easter meme, doing the crip walk. You're like, okay. There's a certain maybe point where you're like, have we gone too far?
We can never go too far with Snoop. I'm
true.
so glad that Snoop Dobbs, like, I'm so glad that his trajectory in life has made my life so much better.
I don't know. He was getting a bunch of shit yesterday.
You think Snoop cares?
No, I don't think Snoop gives a shit.
no.
Okay, so you're born on 420. By the way,
Yeah,
we
so I
get
was born on
squirreled
420,
often.
and so I grew up in a small town in Arizona called Buckeye, but I grew up in like I don't want to call it a suburb because it definitely wasn't a suburb, but like a little subsection of the town called Valencia. So I was actually grew up in the same house that my dad grew up in. My dad was raised by his grandparents because I mean my grandma she was just a drunken basically. So and when my dad has a bunch
like the generational, I'm like, okay.
My dad has a bunch of brothers and sisters, and they all have a different dad. And my grandma was like, I think she was like 14 or 15 when she had my dad. So my dad was raised by his grandparents. So in 1969, my grandparents were Mormon. So they moved to Buckeye, Arizona, because Buckeye is like a Mormon enclave. The Mormons come from Ohio. They come from Nauvoo. And Buckeye, Arizona is like they come from those guys came from Ohio too. Had a little Mormon thing down there. Anyway, that's how my dad ended up in Arizona, and I grew up in the same house he grew up in. Grew up poor, grew up real white in a real brown neighborhood. Grew up fighting at the bus stop, government cheese, that type of shit, you know what I mean? Like real food stamps, like the one that looked like Monopoly money that you try to hide.
Before the EBT cards.
Yeah, no, it was
yeah, dude.
That type of
government peanut butter. I will never get that image.
I had a great life. Grew up across the street from my grandparents. That's actually how my dad met my mom, is because my mom lived across the street and a couple houses down, and then my dad's sister and my mom became friends. Met my dad, had kids, and then I lived in Arizona from age 0 till I was 14. So my kindergarten all the way to 8th grade, I grew up in Arizona. And then when I graduated 8th grade, my parents moved me to Layton, Utah. And then from Layton, I went to high school there. I met my wife in Layton, that type of thing. But I mean, I grew up poor, grew up fighting all the time.
Do you remember the first time you fought? Like we did an episode, I think it was the last episode that we did, and we were talking about kind of like the first time that we fought. And it's kind of different than within the scope of your family, because you don't have any, do you have siblings?
I have an older brother and a younger sister. I have a brother that's 3 years older than me. And then I have a sister that's 7 years younger than me.
Okay. What was the first time that you fought like outside of the home?
Just kids in the neighborhood and then at school. Cause this is what's crazy, right? So now I live in Stansbury now, and I was picking on my son. I'm like, yeah, you need to go hang out at the skate park or something. Cause I was doing the math. I had already been in 9 fist fights by the time I was his age. And I think at that time he was like 9 or 10, but it was just like, it wasn't like a big thing, like growing up. Like fighting was just a part of life. And like, it wasn't like a big, huge, like drama thing. It was just like, just fighting. And I mean, like, no cable, no internet, like outside all the time, latchkey kids. Both my parents worked. My mom worked a seasonal job at a cotton gin, but my dad was always working. And, but it was just, just being kids, running around, finding stuff to do, that type of just fighting all the time. Like one of my most memorable, like the one that I remember the most was just like at school, like probably like in 1st or 2nd grade, fighting guys. My best friend, Gene, I got in a fight with him. Then we became friends. That cliche story, that literally happened to me too. But
Keith, I was literally just going to ask you. I was going to be like, hey, like I know that I have definitely made friends with people that I fought. But like, do you remember fighting someone and then watching that become a friendship later? And it's just funny how like as young men, right, little like boys, really, we don't know how to express. And we're like, well, you know what? We're just going to fight and see what happens. And then you're like, hey, that was fun. you want to like go play, go ride bikes.
That was my first best friend, Alan Mortson, fighting in first grade. Teacher sat us down and said, "You guys are done fighting. You got to figure this out." So then we just started hanging out and being friends.
That's literally what happened to me too, almost verbatim. And then what's crazy is, and I didn't know this at the time because we were kids, but my mom and his mom were friends growing up. And like literally, like they brought Gene to my parents' house when he was like 2 or 3 days old to show him, look, we got a new baby. So we didn't know that our parents knew each other. And then we started hanging out. And then when he came over to my house, my parents were like, oh, hey, we know your mom and dad and your grandma. And they used to take us to the fair. And all, just like, they were like good friends, used to babysit each other. Yeah, I didn't know that. But, when you're a little kid fighting, it's just one of them things. But it's funny that you say, because like I try that whole like childhood trauma and all that bullshit. Like I try not to like believe in that. But like I think that shit's real because I feel like that's one of my like even my whole life to this day, like I'm really nice, I'm really friendly, and I'm really jovial, you know what I mean? But like in my own family, like I'm the crazy one and everybody know. I have a brother who's literally schizophrenic who lives in a home who's like literally crazy. But like once somebody pisses me off and I go off the rocker, I'm the crazy one in the family. And my family knows that. But most people that I'm surrounded by, they don't really know that. Like I'm so nice and jovial and friendly. Like my whole life, people will fuck with me, thinking that I'm a sissy, but I'm not. You know what I mean? They take my kindness for weakness. So like my whole, even like traveling to San Diego, going to Vegas, it's almost like something from my childhood to like let people know that you're not gonna fuck with me. And like I want to do good. I want to be, you know what I mean? Like competing. For the past 12 years. It's like I've had to convince people from the small town in Tooele that we can beat people up from anywhere in the country. We have state champions, national champions, heavyweight champions, jiu-jitsu kids, adults, women, dude, just because we're from this small place and our gym's not little anymore, but that spot we had on Main Street, man, it was a shoebox. So to be able to go from that and compete on a regional and a national level, you know what I mean? I'm real proud about that.
Do you feel like, Keith, I saw this thing the other day on social where it was talking about like and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact verbiage, but it was like the part of us inside, like that, all that anger, all that shit, all the stuff, like you said, the childhood trauma, all of those kind of different things builds this kind of like animal inside of us, this creature, this fucking thing inside of us that we have to kind of maintain and hold on to and control in a sense. Do you feel like you have something that's kind of like, not always, but like if you get real triggered or if you get real pissed off or if you, even if you're like fucking exhausted and your kids drive you nuts by the end of the day, like, do you feel like you have that thing still inside of you that you have to be mindful of, or have you learned to kind of make peace with it? And so now it's not so, damaging, I guess, internally.
I wouldn't call it damaging, but it's like when you get older, like, you learn. That's one thing about like running a business. Like when I first started a business, I had worked at Walmart for 10 years. You know what I mean? So because I did 15 years at Walmart. So the last 5 years I was running the gym and working at Walmart at the same time. And when you first start a business, like you don't know like what fires to put out. You know what I mean? Like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. When you work at a corporation, everything's just kind of, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. Running a business has you worry a lot, but it kind of taught me like not to worry and not get so flustered and flipping out and tomorrow's going to come no matter what. So I feel like running a business and then aging has taught me, hey, don't freak out, like that type of shit. You know what I mean? But
this too shall pass.
Yeah. And then it's like, and my dad too, my dad's just like me. My dad's the nicest, most sweetest, most humble. Like the only time you'll ever see him mad is like when he loses his temper or when he's hungry, he gets real hangry. But like, I used to hear stories from my mom be like, hey, you're crazy. But then I'm kind of the same way. I'm like the nicest guy in the world. But when you piss it, and I'll give you 3 miles of rope, but if you figure out a way to hang yourself, it's going to be a bad day.
So you moved to Utah when you're a teenager, is that right?
Yeah, 14. The summer of 1997 is when I moved to Utah.
And what changed for you after that?
Just my environment, man. Because that's what I try to tell people. Like I grew up in the hood. Like when I go back to my old house, my old neighborhood, I mean, it's atrocious. Like it's just ghetto, you know what I mean? And I didn't know no different because I grew up there. And like I said, when I grew up poor, like it's not something to brag about, but like I grew up poor. Like I said, government cheese. I had good, loving parents. You know what I mean? My grandparents were poor. My parents were poor. Uh, so when we moved to Utah, like the total environment, it went from being like the only white kids on the school bus to like being like they're only white people. Like, because when we moved to Layton, Utah in 1990, like everybody had blonde. It was like the height of the dudes had their hair blonde. The chicks had the little A-line haircut. My brother always used to be like, man, these chicks, like, they all look like clones. They all look the same. And I was like, yeah, and I want to talk to all of them. You know what I mean? So it was,
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Woolly. I'm sure you've heard how we're all consuming copious amounts of microplastics. Well, it turns out all of that workout activewear that you're wearing also has those toxic chemicals embedded right into them. All of Woolly's clothes are 100% merino wool, which means it's a natural fabric, which is far better for your overall health. On top of their clothes not only looking good, they're naturally odor resistant and they wick moisture away from your body. So I wear them all the time, whether I'm working out, hiking, around the house, out for the night, it doesn't really matter. Woolly has you covered. I swapped out all of my boxers with Woolly. Not only do they look good, not only do they feel good, but I also wasn't wrapping my boys up in all of those synthetic materials and microplastics. So if you're ready to take your health seriously, it's time to go with Woolly. Listeners of this podcast can save 15% on anything at their website. Click the link in the description and be sure to enter in promo code BRAVE at checkout. It's time to get serious about your health, fellas.
just that, but then like our life changed as far as like my mom was able to stay home, and the cost of living in Utah back then was just night and day different. And when we moved up here, like we ate better, we had better clothes. It was just a better environment to raise kids. There wasn't that like that all that negative energy like when you would go to school and all that kind of stuff. Because you don't realize you get used to that, but it's not normal. You know what I mean? It's not normal to always just be on alert and have anxiety. You know what I mean? To like let your guard down. Dude, when I first started hanging out in Layton, and my friends, because I was 14, 15, nobody had cars. We'd ride our bikes and stuff. I used to take a bike chain, and that you would like lock up, and I would wear it around my waist like a belt, and I would walk around. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know nobody. I didn't know if I was in the wrong neighborhood. I didn't know if this is the wrong color. You know what I mean? Where I came from, I knew all that. But like walking around up there, it was like, and like up in Layton, like you go down a couple streets, it turns into Kaysville. You go the other way, it turns into Clearfield. Like you don't know, you know what I mean? And I didn't have cable. I just wasn't aware of the area. So I was on, but then after a couple of years, all that kind of went away.
Did you have a hard time adjusting? Like I've never had to move schools when I was, I grew up in obviously Grantsville and spent my entire elementary, middle, high school, all going to school with the same people. So I never had to deal with being like the new kid. But I remember when new kids moved in, especially like into middle school and into high school, and it was kind of a thing, right? The new kid shows up. What was that like? Was that something that you ever really had to deal with too much?
Well, the funny thing about that is, like I said, I didn't want to move, but my mom, she was like, you're in 8th grade now. You're going into high school. When you go into high school, you're going to have a whole new friend group. You're probably going to play football, this and that. And she was right, and she did a really good job of convincing me of that. But then when we moved to Utah, my mom goes down to the high school to register us, and they're like, no, he's still in junior high. My mom's like, what? So up in Layton, junior high is 3 years. It goes to 9th grade. And then, and then so Layton High is 10th, 11th, and 12th. So she convinced me to move because I wasn't going to be in junior high no more, but then I had to go back to junior high. So, yeah.
You lied to me, Mom.
Yeah, but
you lied to me.
She did. I mean, it was a total accident. She didn't know.
Yeah, she didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, she had no idea. But when I went to that junior high, I didn't really have any of that, like nobody like fucked with me like that. And like I said, back then, like I was about it. I wasn't worried about, what if I'm going to have to fight? I'm just like, you know what I mean? It is what it is. I wasn't worried about that. I grew up fighting. So it wasn't like
yeah, I can imagine late in junior high in the 90s, dude. You were probably the fucking toughest kid there.
Right.
Yeah, but like, I'm just friendly, you know what I mean? I never had no, I was just friendly, you know what I mean? I was more, I really wanted to try to make the basketball team, because back then I used to play basketball and all that. I was more focused on that type of stuff, but I wasn't worried about like, oh, someone's going to beat me up or any of that kind of stuff. And then even though my older brother was in high school, we lived by this, because our house was kind of in between the high school and the junior high. I live right next to the Layton Park, and our back fence, we shared the fence with the park. So you hop over our back fence, you're in the park. You walk out of the park, you're in the high school. So we were right there. And then my older brother was crazy too. So like I wasn't worried about like somebody beating me up. I didn't really have those worries. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a crazy transition. But the funny thing is all my friends that I made like 3 really good friends that 9th grade year, and they were all brand new kids as well. They were just kind of like meandering around by themselves. So we all just kind of hovered together. And one of the kids that I met, his name was Shane. He was from Phoenix, and his dad owned the Outback Steakhouse in Layton. And he had been a chef at the Outback down there, and they like franchised out, and they moved to Layton, and I met him. But yeah, all my friends my 9th grade year were all new kids. They were all 2 kids from California and then a kid from Phoenix.
That's awesome, dude.
That's cool to have like other people to like go through some of that same experience, right? As opposed to like being the new guy in the group of, 20 or whatever, or however many people. But like when there's a small group of you and you're like, oh, you're new, I'm new, you're new. Hey, did we all just become best friends? Like
it was literally kind of like that. It was literally like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy.
When did you find your way into like jiu-jitsu, because you, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've got a good base of wrestling. So I don't know if you ever did any of that growing up, or like, where did you take us down the path of how you got to your current, where you're at? Go from then to now, Keith.
Yeah.
So that's what boggles everybody's mind when I wrestle. Like even the guys in Salt Lake, a lot of people like thought that I had moved in here from somewhere else, and like that I was this badass state champion wrestler. I never wrestled a day in my life. I didn't start wrestling until I started doing jiu-jitsu. And then, but I literally grew up fighting. I had cousins and my brother, and like wrestling and scuffling around. Like I was used to be way into like pro wrestling, when I was a little kid. And
Shit, yeah. I mean, that's where most of jiu-jitsu comes from.
Yeah, I'm a fucking 80s baby. So I was into all that. And then, so I always like loved wrestling and fighting. And then my dad was about it. I watched all the UFCs. My cousin, Tim, he's got a crazy story too. You should Google his name, but his name's Tim Croft. In 1995, he was the national heavyweight champion of the United States. He was a undefeated wrestler. So my whole family we'd go to wrestling tournaments. My dad would, cause like I said, we grew up poor. So like he would take us to high school football games. Cause the town that I grew up in, it kind of reminds me of Grantsville, like just like how they're into football and just that small town America type of shit. Buckeye was like that. But my dad would take me to Friday night football games because it was cheap. I mean, back then for $5, you go to the football game, get a thing of popcorn, a soda, a hot dog, and hang out with your friends. You know what I mean? Watch football. I loved it. And then same thing with wrestling. He used to take us to the wrestling meets when I was a little boy. But I never wrestled growing up. But my first exposure to it was just like UFC fighting. My dad was into martial arts. My dad had a couple buddies that did amateur boxing in Arizona. So I always had my dad had a heavy bag growing up. He was always beating on that. I loved 80s movies, that type of shit. I was really, really into pro wrestling. And at the time, and I found all this out later just because I'm a nerd and I like to research all that shit. But WCW and the WWF back in the 80s, like the WCW looked more real to me. You know what I mean? The wrestling looked more real. And then through research, finding out later on, the WCW had a deal with Japan where they would trade wrestlers. They would call them shots. So you'd be an American wrestler. You'd go to Japan for 6 weeks, and then they would send Japanese guys over, the Great Muta, guys like that. And with Billy Robinson teaching the Japanese guys catch wrestling and Shudo and all that kind of stuff. I learned that later, even as a kid, I liked that stuff better because it looked more real. And then over the years, training judo, sambo, catch wrestling. My very first seminar I ever went to was the Eric Paulson seminar. I worked with a guy at work, and like I said, I've always been into fighting and stuff like that. and I was watching. It was like a Japanese match from like 1985, and you know how YouTube is, like you'll be watching something and then 2 hours later it's dog frisbee or some crazy shit like that. So like I'm watching these old Japanese videos, and I started to fall asleep, and then I woke up and then it showed videos of Eric Paulson in like the 80s, like doing demonstrations and stuff. And then Tiger Mask, he's the one who founded Shudo and all that kind of thing. So I go to work to tell a buddy about that. Hey, you ever heard about this Eric Paulson guy? And then he tells me, yeah, I know him. And I was like, what? Literally, the next day he brings in a flyer with Eric's picture on it, and like to register for this seminar. And Eric comes to Utah every March. He comes out here and does a seminar. And my birthday's in April. So my wife, because even back then that seminar was like $180, and this was like fucking 15 years ago, you know? And my wife's like, how about you go to that seminar for your birthday? So she paid for me to go to that seminar. My friend, I went with him to the seminar. And then literally from that day, I never stopped training. I was training in my basement, watching videos, going to seminars, and just like, and like being like a pro wrestling nerd, I knew back in the day that like because dude, even in like back in the 80s, some of those guys were making between $5,000 and $10,000 a week in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They were making stupid money. So back then it was like a protected thing, you know what I mean? Because wrestling was, I don't want to call it fake, but predetermined. And those guys would go to bars and beat people up because they wanted to protect their livelihood. You know what I mean? So I knew that. So when I went to that first seminar, and I was like, holy shit, I can go somewhere. And the very first move I ever learned was a shin lock. I was like, you know what I mean? And then foot locks and all that kind of shit. So I started training consistently in 2010. And then I started training gi jiu-jitsu in 2013. So for almost 2.5 years, I trained nothing but no gi jiu-jitsu. And this is pre-leg lock phase. And I didn't know like the culture, you know what I mean? Back then, if you leg lock somebody, like they'd be waiting for you at the car. Like it was super disrespectful. You didn't do that. It wasn't jujitsu. That's something else, you know what I mean? But I didn't know. I didn't have a coach to teach me and show me. So so in 2010, I went to that seminar, and then from that day, just 24 hours a day. And that's what's funny now, like running a gym, being a coach, doing what I do. Like it's not a surprise to my family because they used to think I had something wrong with me because I would like watch old videos, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, every UFC. I didn't miss a UFC ever. Like all of our friends, we would watch them. I would keep track of everybody's heights, weights, hometown, all that just crazy shit, just nerd out on it. You know what I mean? So then once I decided to open a gym and all that kind of stuff, like it wasn't a surprise to anybody. Like it was just like, yeah, that's the next part of my path.
Keith, who's your favorite professional wrestler?
Oh, I got a couple.
Okay, what's your top three?
Top three, Sting, Ric Flair, and then probably the Steiner brothers.
Okay, those are all solid. Do you have a?
I am not in the professional wrestling space.
Right.
It's something that I obviously I grew up around it, and obviously I knew about it, but I was not into it at all. So, who's yours?
All right, so I'm Andre the Giant. Love Andre the Giant. Yeah. Jake the Snake. Huge fan of Jake the Snake, and then Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah.
Right. Those are like Hacksaw Jim Duggan used to walk around with a 2x4 and just and just like in like American flag, and I was like, that dude is America AF. Like I want to do that with that guy.
Those guys are like, and I don't know, I'm trying to sound like a wrestling snob, but those guys are like New York guys, WWF guys. When I was like a little kid. Growing up in Arizona, like the way that the signals would, because back then it was still like territories. It wasn't like quite like syndicated cable.
Yeah, like syndications and stuff like that. Yeah.
I got WWF from afar. Like if I was at a friend's house or like a commercial or something, I never really got to watch it just because I didn't get that signal, if that makes sense. Yeah. So like I got WCW where I lived at. And then I got WCCW, which is World Class. That showed the Claw that came out. That's like was super famous a couple years ago. That story comes from that organization. Fritz von Erich owned WCCW, so World Class Championship Wrestling. I got that. We got that beamed into where I live. So I didn't really watch a whole bunch of WWF as a little kid. Like once I got older and we started to get cable, then I could watch it.
Yeah.
But I watched WCW is what I
know
watched as a kid.
I didn't know that Sting. I had never even heard of Sting until like I was in high school, I think, or maybe middle school, because then it was like, oh, syndications and cable production, stuff like that. And then I was like, oh, look at this whole other like group.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. And now it's just one big thing.
We had it so fucking hard back then. Like having to hit the side of the fucking TV and adjust the bunny ears and playing Nintendo with fucking the case that you had to wedge into the slot in order to make that shit fucking work.
It's so funny that you say that because
today's episode is brought to you by Heritage Steel. Heritage Steel offers premium cookware made right here in the USA, and that's something that is very, very important for me, is that it is a US made product. Not only is this product made here in the US, but it's a family owned and Tennessee produced item. You can use them any way you want. You can put them on your stove and cook. You can put them in the oven. They're going to be great for all of that, and they're super easy to clean. And guess what? If you're listening to this right now and you're on the Brave Men Dare podcast, you get 10% off. Go to heritagesteel.us/brave and get you 10% off anything in the Heritage Steel inventory. Make sure you use promo code BRAVE when you're checking out, and that'll get you that 10% off anything in the Heritage Steel store. Heritage Steel, premium cookware for less.
There's a famous podcast. It's called 605 because the WCW, they would run their show. It would come on at 605. And like back then, they'd be like, why would they do that? You know what I mean? And there's a podcast about it. But when I was a kid, because in Arizona, the time doesn't change there, but it changes everywhere else in the United States. So like in the fall, right, I would fucking haul ass home to watch wrestling at 6:05, and I come hauling ass in the house, turn the TV on, and wrestling would just barely be going off. So when the time would change, wrestling would start an hour earlier. So like, and I didn't understand like daylight savings and all that. So that one time a year, I'd fucking haul ass home and I'd go to watch it and it'd be going off. And I'm like, fuck!
It's just like 4 miserable months of no wrestling. I keep missing it. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah. But that's like no watch. You know what I mean? Looking at the stars, trying to, hey, what time do I got to be home? I would be home at 6:05 so I could watch wrestling.
Yep.
I was all about it.
When did you open up the gym? Like, when was what was that process like? What was the decision making kind of around that? And why
so
did you
I had a
like
buddy. Yeah, I had a buddy that I was training with, Micah, back in 2013. He was a dog groomer. He had owned a dog shop, and he's like, yeah, we should go and try to open a business. Like and I was fucking terrified. I didn't want to do it. And he kind of like talked me into it. Not like in a bad way, but like just like, if I could run a dog shop, we could do this. And the original plan was he was kind of going to be the business guy. We agreed to like be in partnership for 3 years. We signed a 3-year lease. Hey, if this shit don't work out, we'll go our separate ways, blah, 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 blah. But that was the original agreement. And so you can't make this shit up. I refinanced my house and I had some money. So I put in half, he put in half. Sounds like a lot of money. It was $1,500. So he put in $1,500 and I put in $1,500. So we put our money in last month. We get everything all turned on. We sign the lease. I go over there and I go to his dog shop and he's just like, I can tell by his demeanor something wrong. He's like, yeah, I got to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, what's up? And I mean, we already signed. Everything's legal, you know? And he's like, yeah, me and my wife, we're getting a divorce. So like from day one of starting the gym, he was like going through a divorce. He couldn't really help me. Like that, the first 3 years of that gym was the worst 3 years of my life. It was rough on me financially, emotionally, rough on my marriage, rough on my, when I started the gym, my kids were 3 and 5. And I was working a full-time job. My wife was working a full-time job. She was trying to get her bachelor's degree. It was just, it was fucking brutal, man. And then trying to figure out, because I'm not like a business guy. You know what I mean? I say the fuck word a lot. I like pro wrestling. I like fist fights. So
I don't know those things in business guys. Like I just consider, I like not trying to like sound weird. Like I consider myself a bit of a business guy.
You're a business guy.
I'm a business
You're
guy.
A business guy.
I say fuck all the time. I love fighting. I love pro wrestling. I'm a bit of an idiot, really, and just. But I agree though. Those first 3 years, Keith, man, it's no unless you've gone through it. It's hard to explain to people. When we started our gym in San Diego, it was my wife worked full time at a regular job, and we had a 6 month. No, we had We had a 4-month-old son.
Damn.
And I was like, hey, I borrowed and begged and stole every dollar I could, and we're going to open this gym. And like, I literally would like lay a floor mat, like a horse stall mat. I'd like put like 5 of those down and go check on my son, who was like in his car seat with like a fan trying to like keep him going. And I'd go do 3 more and then go back and check on him. Dude, those first 3 years trying to figure out business, right? And at the same time go like, because it's a thing you're passionate about, so you want it to be great, but just trying to like, you're like, P&L statement? What the fuck is a P&L statement?
Yeah. Well, and that's,
dude,
I think that the 2 things that I had a really good support system, like with my mom and dad and shit. But like the 2 things that I think saved me, hindsight looking back, one is I'm super passionate about it, like ridiculously passionate about it. And then I had a shitty fucking job, man. So it was like I knew what my future was like. I had already did 10 years there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I knew like what I had to go back to if I couldn't make the gym work. And it was just like, you know, and you're talking about no money, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And like one of the things that kind of got me over the hump was I came to pick up my kids. My mom was watching my kids, and I come pulling up. She's helped me get my kids in the car. Like I said, they're babies, 3 and 5. She's helped me get them in the car. And she comes out and she's like, God damn, look at them bald ass tires. She goes, I shouldn't even let my grandbabies get in here. And like, I don't cry at funeral. Last time I cried was at the Green Mile when I was like 14. Like, I'm not like a crier.
Yeah, that's a rough emotional movie. I get it. I think I cried. I have no doubt that you cried.
Of course I bawled.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So just to segue, remind me to tell you that Jeep story. But speaking of the Green Mile, right? My high school girlfriend, she's like, hey, you know, my parents are guard. Do you want to come over and watch a movie? I was like, fuck yeah, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I haul ass over there.
Right.
Nobody's home. It's summertime. I'm like, hell yeah. She puts in the Green Mile. Dude, for 2 hours, I'm like this, trying not to cry. Like, I gotta go. I didn't even kiss that chick on the neck, man. I was like, dude, I was gonna cry the whole fucking time. I get in the car, I'm driving home crying and shit. Like, that's the fucking worst movie ever.
Dude, it's so bad. It's so bad. When I was 17 or 18, and I went to see, my girlfriend at the time, we went and saw like a double feature. We saw Good Will Hunting, and then we saw City of Angels.
Banger.
Okay. That one with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, right? Yeah. And after City of Angels, I couldn't stop crying. Like, the credits are rolling. I'm just sitting in the theater bawling, and I could not stop crying. And she was like, not affected in the slightest.
She's
so
like,
we're like
okay.
leaving the theater, and I'm still just like sobbing. We have to take the elevator through the parking garage, and she's just like standing there staring at me, and I couldn't stop crying. It was just like it had ripped me open so much. It was so funny.
Not a lot of dates after that one.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
Yeah,
we didn't live happily ever after.
For the best.
For the best.
That's funny. Anyway, back to my Jeep story. So my mom comes out, and she's helped me get the kids in the car, and she's like, God damn, look at these bald ass tires. Like, I shouldn't even let my kids, my grandbabies ride in here. And I just start fucking bawling like a baby, man. And my mom's like, oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. And I'm like, dude, I'm fucking struggling here. Like, I'm fucking, and they see the struggle, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, I'm fucking broke. She's like, well, how much money do you need? I'm like, Mom, I need money. Like, I go, I'm broke. I'm like, I don't have money to pay the gas, I was able to pay the rent, you know what I mean? And, and then I need tires, and everything's just stacking up on me. And I'm like, at first I was embarrassed that I had got myself in that situation. You know what I mean? Because in my head, you know, I'm poor white trash. I'm a fucking hillbilly. I barely graduated high school. How dare I think that I can run a fucking business? You know what I mean? That's like what I was feeling like, fuck, man, I can't believe, like, I just thought I made a bad decision, you know, put my family in a rough spot. And my mom's like, well, how much money do you need? And I'm just bawling. I'm like, yeah, you don't understand. Like, she's like, well, how much? I'm like, Mom, I need like $5,000. She's like, okay, I'll give it to you tomorrow. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Fucking goes down to the bank. Tomorrow comes, gives me $5,000. Don't worry about paying me back. Like, I'm not saying I didn't have to pay her back, but I know you pay me back. And then that money got me over the hump. I was able to pay this off, and then things just started rolling. I made it to the end of my lease. Me and my buddy, we ended up like going separate ways. Just like one thing after another just started happening. And then I was able to like not make any money, but like just keep my head above water. Because for those first 3 years, that was one of the things. Like when me and my business partner split, it was like the main reason was because we agreed to be in a partnership for 3 years, but both of us were just continually paying money. So
Yeah.
by him leaving, he got out of the, you know, the $600 bill a month that the gym was costing us at the time. So, but yeah, those first 3 years were brutal. But I just stuck with it. And then right when shit started getting to where like, oh, I can breathe, like my lease was up on the building. And it was like, I had been in debt. That was another thing that I was really proud of too, because my mom was the one that like, Keith, you got to grow. Like you're surviving right now. You got to go to, and I'm like, Mom, I don't know if I want to go be fucking broke again, man. I've been fucking starving for 3 years. You know, I don't know if I want to. And she's like, not, you know, she kind of like talked me into it. She actually called her real estate guy that sold her house, and they found me that warehouse out at the industrial depot, and that kind of changed the game. I was able to move out there. Originally I partnered up with Ty, and we kind of shared the gym. So he shared some of the like financial responsibilities, and it was a good partnership for the strength and conditioning guys, because we were partnering up at the time. And then just one thing led to another. And then we just kept winning and kept kicking ass, kept winning. And I was able to quit my job in 2018. I went to Walmart. I got on the intercom. I told that place to fuck off. Fucking went. True story. I walked right in. I got on the intercom. Excuse me. Can I have everybody's attention? This place can fuck off. I quit. I went to the back. I shook everybody's hand. Handed in my keys, my equipment, and then fucking the rest is history, man.
That's awesome.
Ever since.
That's that fucking American dream, man. It's that hustle. It's that grind. It's that like, you know, I like Keith, I 100% get it. Like just that, like you're like looking at it going like, fuck, like, I don't know if this is going to work. Right. And you just keep pushing. And I mean, I talk to people all the time. Like this came up a couple of years ago. We were having a poker night, and they were talking about the jiu-jitsu school, and they're like, "Oh man, I bet that guy's printing money." And I'm like, "Oh, I bet he's not." I was like, "I bet he's not." I was like, "They're like, oh man, but there are all these people," and I'm like, "You don't understand." I was like, you know what this place costs to operate. A lot of people miss that. Even like our gym in San Diego, like, yeah, we had a 10,000 square foot space, you know, couple hundred members. It was just crushing comparatively. I'm like, yeah, I've got 17 staff members. 4 of them are full time. I was like, they all make way more money than I do. I was like, but in order to keep this place going, that's what you've got to do. You got to put this money into it, right? You got to reinvest in it. And it pays off for the most part, right? For those that continue to drive and grow and hustle. But there's tons of, I mean, for every person, Keith, there's probably 40 people who got 50% of the way. They got to the 50-yard line, and they're like, shit's too hard. Or the people that got to the 10-yard, they got the kickoff. I'm back to football analogies. I'm still real upset about this, but I know I don't want to really talk about it too much. But the
Lions are Ben's team.
I'm a Lions fan, and this is just a rough week for me.
Yeah, it's been rough.
I don't really watch football, so I'm not sure what went on. So
it's okay. We don't have to talk about it.
I want to talk about the specific. Like, first off, like, kudos to your mom, right? Like, moms are one of those like 100%. Things. Luckily, I think all three of us had good moms at some point and in some ways. So, but I want to talk about like that moment where she encourages you to grow and to keep pushing, right? So you're just keeping your head above water. The gym's working. You're kind of finding a rhythm with it after 3 fucking years. And then the lease is up and you got to expand. You got to grow. And I think that's such an important thing. Like, I can look back over the course of my life and see where as soon as I get comfortable in a space, as soon as it feels like, okay, we've got the rhythm down and we're kind of doing this thing, you have to grow. You have to expand. You have to stretch yourself outside of that comfort zone. And it's fucking hard, dude. It's always fucking scary. Like, it's never easy to do that. No matter how many times I seem like I've done it, it's always one of those things that it's just a fucking, it's a leap. It's a leap into the unknown space, and you got to just confront it. So
and that's the
kudos
thing, like,
to her for pushing you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, me and my mom, like, growing up, we would like butt heads, but like my parents, that's the one thing about my mom and dad is they're the most loyal. Like, they're just about it. So like, and I kind of like with like my kids that way too, like just trying to encourage them. And that was one of the things too, is like my parents are real encouraging, but it's like, man, I think these fuckers think I'm smarter than I am. You know what I mean? I think
Because they fucking believe in you, dude.
yeah, like I don't, you know what I mean? But like, it was just, I don't know. It was just, and when I was working at Walmart, because everybody always asks me like, how do you run a successful business? How do you do this? How do you do that? I think the number one thing, like for not just for me personally, but like for anyone who's successful, is just like I've always had a really, 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 really good work ethic. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I've always been honest, and that's even to this day. Like you can't find nobody that say I fucked them out of money. Like I don't sleep with my students. I don't do none of that weird crazy shit. And it's like, so I've been like a stand-up dude in that way. But as far as like having just a stupid work ethic, like, I like, and I think like in my own brain, like I know I'm not the smartest guy, to this, to that. It's just like, nobody's going to outwork me. And even like, I use that mentality in the gym is it's like with Court McGee, right? So I grew up with Court McGee. He's I've known him since we were in junior high, and I'm good friends of his older brother, I know his whole family. But like, I always use him because he's just a normal dude. Like we grew up together. Like he was at my wedding. He slept on my parents' couch. I went to his wedding. Like we know each other. And it was just like in the UFC, he won a bunch of fights that a lot of people didn't think he could win just with work ethic, staying in somebody's ass, just like doesn't have the best jiu-jitsu, don't have the best striking, but you won't find it. You got to kill that dude. He just has a stupid work ethic. And I always told myself when I was working at Walmart and I'm fucking twiddling my thumbs and I'm ready to pull my hair out, like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was like, there's no way that if I worked as hard as I work for these motherfuckers who don't appreciate me, if I work this hard for myself, it'd be impossible to not be successful. But like those first 3 years, I kind of didn't know where to put my energy. You know what I mean? Like which fires to put out, what. Now I'm 12 years in. Like, I mean, there could be a murder on the mat and I'll be like, well, clean it up. We'll worry about it tomorrow. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Because every like life teaches you that. Every breakup, every death, every fucking promotion. Like my Walmart promotion that I didn't get led me to the gym that I have today. When I didn't get that promotion, I was heartbroken. I moved to Utah because they promised to promote me, and they didn't promote me. Promoted somebody else. I was heartbroken and all that. But that negative turned into a positive. You know what I mean? And like. That heartbreak of losing your girlfriend, you know what I mean? You've been married a couple times. Like a divorce is a motherfucker. But like, look who you found. If it wasn't for that horrible divorce, you wouldn't have found Steph. You know what I mean? So it's like bad things make good things happen. And the older you get, you realize that. You know what I'm saying? So I was just grinding, just trying to handle business and just fucking keeping my head down. And even to this day, like I said, every day grinding, like just trying to figure out how to get better each year. Last year we took 15 fights. We won 8 or 9 of them, like just trying to stay busy. We're going to do some traveling this year, doing a little bit different stuff with our strength and conditioning, just trying to get better. You know what I mean? Just working.
That's right. Anytime I talk to somebody about it, they're like, well, what do you think is like, listen, I was like, there's no magic button. I'm not more brilliant than the next person. I have no better ideas than the next person. I was like, at the end of the day, there's not a chance in hell that you'll ever outwork me. I was like, because I wake up working and I go to sleep working. And while I'm dreaming, I'm working. And you're just never going to outwork me. I was like, I don't have to be the best looking, the best at this, the smartest, or anything like that. It doesn't matter. I was like, because I don't have an off button. Doesn't matter to me. No, and I agree. Divorce is a motherfucker. I ain't doing this shit again.
It goes back to that Kobe Bryant analogy where he was talking about, I think it was like his 4th year in the league. He's like, I just did the math. He's like, it's mathematically impossible for these guys to outwork me. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But that's kind of what's hard, like with this generation, because it's like I'm 42 now. I don't feel 42. I don't act 42. I don't look 42. But dealing with some of these young kids that like want to be good at something and not put in the work, man, makes me want to just pull my fucking hair out, man. Because it's like, I don't care if your mom thinks you're cute. I don't care. You know what I mean? We got to fucking put in the reps. We got to put in the time. And like with fighting and jiu-jitsu, there's such a fucking small window, man. You're talking, it's like Boomer and Zach. I recruited Boomer and Zach out of high school. Boomer's 27, Zach's 30. And it went by like that. It just, you know what I'm saying? It's like we have such a small window. We got to put in the time. And when you're young, your body can recover. So you can put in more reps. You can go hard. You can make more mistakes. You have less responsibilities, no wives, no kids, you know what I mean? Once they start getting girlfriends and jobs and, you know what I'm saying? Like the time is now and we got to work. And that's that's one of the things that I've noticed over the years is like each generation, a student, you know, oh, my toenail hurts. Oh, my, you know, I got a hangnail. Oh, my back hurts. It's like, put your gloves on. We're fighting. You know what I mean?
I want to ask you about your jiu-jitsu, because I feel like jiu-jitsu to me is like it's like the wine or what's the another thing that ages really well, like whiskey or something like that, right? All of
Myself.
those, Ben, but it's Ben,
how old are you? Ben,
I'm 40.
40?
I'm 40.
Nice.
I don't look a day over 22.
Nice.
Right? I've got a body of a 70-year-old.
Nice.
It's wonderful.
Nice.
But Keith, how has your jiu-jitsu evolved over the course of, you know, the last decade? What do you feel like what do you see differently now, not just about the game itself and the sport and how it's changed? Because there's tons of evolution of, like you said in the beginning, back in like 2010, 2013, where leg locks weren't a game yet, all these kind of evolutions of jiu-jitsu, but just individually on like your personal experience with it, how have you seen it evolved within the scope of your game and your processing and how you kind of approach it?
I don't, just as I'm getting older, I pick my roles a lot more. And then, I kind of always had like a lazy man jujitsu anyway. Like I like to wrestle and shit, but I literally, every time I wrestle, I try not to go over 40%. You know what I mean? Sometimes like I have that little burst of speed, but, I just try to keep it playful now that I've gotten older. And now that was the one thing. So when I first started, I did 2.5 years of just strictly no-gi. You know what I mean? And in the beginning, like I'm in a basement in Tooele. So I don't know if you've told him the stories about how you used to train in a basement. I used to train there was no gyms out here. So we used to train in our buddy's basement. Well, back then trying to get people to come and train with me, they thought I was weird. You know, who wants to come over and fucking wrestle with you in your basement?
You want to go get sweaty and wrestle in my basement?
I put some mats down.
Sign me up, bro.
Yeah, they thought it was weird, but
let's go sweat in each other's mouths. It'll be great.
I started going to competitions and winning medals, like without a coach, watching YouTube videos, going to seminars. So like that kind of changed the game for like my peers, like, oh shit, this guy. So then I was able to start to train, but I trained only no-gi for the first 2.5 years. And then when I met Gustavo Rodriguez, the guy who gave me my black belt, I started training in gi. And he comes from a really like Bushesha, the guy who owns Zenith, I can't think of his name, Cavaca and Gustavo got all their belts at the same time. So he comes from a really, really good gym in Brazil. So I learned really good, like technical gi jiu-jitsu, and my instructor's small, you know what I mean? So I learned really good technical gi jiu-jitsu, but for the first couple of years, I didn't like it. And I never wanted to get belted. But once I started to open a gym, then it's like, oh, what belt are you? Who do you train under? Like back then, lineage was like fucking, if you didn't have a good jiu-jitsu lineage, who gives a fuck if you know jiu-jitsu? Nobody cared. Now it's like there's so many people and everybody's a black belt, but back then it was a little bit different. So to come from a really good, respected like Carlson Gracie lineage was like important to me. So when I first started doing gi, I didn't like it. It was summer. It was hot as fuck in that place. I mean, the roof was this high. The window, like the sun would come in. I mean, it's like we're fighting in a fucking fish tank. And I told my dad, I was like, why is it so fucking hot in here, man? I've had this cooler running for fucking 3 days straight. What's going on? Well, he climbs up there and looks at it. And it was like a window unit that they put on the top of the building to get that giant. It was like just a little, he's like, yeah, that fucking cooler's for like a trailer or like a window. It's not for a big ass building like this. It was just hot as fuck in there. I hated
things just running at max capacity. Dude. Just like, I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
And I just got choked all the time because back then it was when Brandon McCullum was like my main training partner. And he had trained at Absolute MMA. So he had like all his jiu-jitsu, he trained in a gi, and all my jiu-jitsu, I trained no gi. So he fucking choked me every which way. I just fucking hated it. I couldn't stand it. But now as I've gotten older and as I've evolved, I enjoy gi jiu-jitsu a little bit better than I do no gi jiu-jitsu. I think I'm better at no gi jiu-jitsu, but just because I like to wrestle and I like leg locks and I like catch wrestling, I've just been to so many. I mean, fuck, I probably got like 100 hours at catch wrestling seminars that I've been to, and then judo and sambo and all that. But as I've matured, I'd like gi a little bit better just because it's more slower paced. There's a lot more stuff you can do. You know what I mean? Like if you just think of it like in math, gi or no gi, you got a collar tie, underhook, overhook. But in gi, you can grab anywhere. The only thing you're not allowed to do in a gi is you can't go 4 fingers in on your 4 fingers in on your opponent's gi, and you can't go 4 fingers in like on their pants. But you can choke them with their belt. There's just more stuff you can do, and it's just a lot more slower paced, you know. And now that I'm getting older, you get some of those, and that's another thing too. Is it's like, oh, you're a black belt. You get some fucking 6 foot tall, 200-pound. I used to wrestle, you know, 22, 25 years old. Those guys are a motherfucker, man. And I don't care how good your jiu-jitsu is. You're wrestling like this, you know. And you put a gi on them. My old black belt, Jared Manning, taught me that because his son wrestled at the Naval Academy. Dude, that fucking dude came in the gym and he had traps like this. And Jared's getting him a gi, and he grabs this A5 gi. And I was like, oh, dude, I go, he's probably like an A3. He don't need it. He's like, no, you give these wrestlers this big-ass gi. He put him in this big-ass gi, and you just hang on to him, make him tired. But, yeah, so you used to wrestle. I give those fuckers an oversized gi. That's a black belt tip.
Oh, man, I'm keeping that one. I'm like, oh, here you go. You think you're hard? Here, put this A5 on, this A4 real quick. It's like drowned in this fucking gi.
Yeah, they drowned in it. It gives you something to hang on to. You just hang on for the ride. You know what I mean? But the biggest thing is training more gi mainly, and then just I still roll all the time. And like the guys at the gym will get, you're not rolling again today, but it's like I'm there 6 days. I train 6 days a week, so it's like I pick my rolls. I try not to go as hard, you know what I'm saying? So that type of stuff. And it's just like, my daughter's 18 and my son is 15. So I'm trying to do jujitsu with my grandbabies, you know what I mean? I don't want to be like where I can't turn my neck and touch my toes and all that kind of shit. So I'm trying to, you know, I plan on doing this the rest of my life. And I have no like naivete about being a world champion or any of that. I'm a far better coach than I've ever been a grappler. You know what I mean? I'm way more successful as a coach, but I've coached way more than I've competed, but I'm just a coach. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go win ADCCs. I'm not naive about that. So I'm just trying to stay on the mat and fucking build savages.
I wouldn't call it like naive. It's not, I mean, I think that's a serious recognition of your, you know, where are you successful and what is working for you, right? You're like, no, like, first of all, like, let's be honest, like, we're all a little bit older. Some of us, some of us
39, I think. No, last time I checked.
No, I think you're missing one.
I'm going to be 44 this year.
Yeah. So some of us are the oldest. You, but
hey, let's fucking roll.
Yeah. All right. But at the same time, you're like, no, like this is the area that I'm good at. I used to tell people at my CrossFit gym, like, listen, I'm not the best coach. Like that guy's got a master's in biochemistry. That guy's got a master's in, you know, sports physiology. This person is a doctor of physical therapy. Like I barely know how many nipples somebody has, right? Like that's not my area of expertise. What I do focus on is like the business side of things. Like that's what because I, you know, as Craig said, I'm a businessman. I'm a businessman.
You are a businessman.
But I think maturing as like, I don't want to say as a man, but I think maturing as an adult, like you learn that, like what you're good at. Because dude, that's like being a teenager. You're trying to figure out who you are, what to fit in, what music you like. I'm 42, man. I know who I am and I know what I like. I order the same shit at every restaurant. I've been married to the same chick for 20 years. You know what I mean? I order the same. So I like what I like and I don't like what I don't like. And like, as you mature, it's like, you can be like, oh, okay, you can say that, you know what I mean? But I like, and as a coach, like I'm really good at like, hey, this move would be good for your game. And like, I've been a student of martial arts, like literally I was watching jujitsu videos online before I trained jujitsu. Like I just, you know what I mean? It's just something that I like. So being good at jujitsu and like being a good coach, I'd way rather be and being a coach in jiu-jitsu will fuck you too. You know what I mean? You put your heart and soul into people and they just fucking vanish, you know?
Yeah.
And you do a lot for people and they forget about that. But it's just like, that stuff happens. But all like this weekend, you know, I took 2 kids from a little old town in Tooele and we went to San Diego, which is like the mecca of jiu-jitsu in America. And we're going with the Art of Jiu-Jitsu kids and Atos kids, and we're losing by decision, you know what I mean, on the hometown match. So it's like,
That's
I'm proud
huge.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Just took 2 kids that and we're keeping competing on the national level. And we do that in MMA. We do that in jiu-jitsu. So I'm really proud of that. So because it used to bother me. Oh, that guy never fought. Oh, that guy don't compete. That it's like, that's not who I am. I'm a coach. You know what I mean? So I'm comfortable saying that. And I want to compete at black belt because I competed at every belt color except for purple. I competed at brown. I won the IBJJF here in Salt Lake as a brown belt. And I want to compete as a black belt, and I will eventually. But it's just the timing because everybody's always got shit going on. You know what I mean? So to be selfish and put the time into me, and I'm going to do a camp and all that type of shit. So I'll compete as a black belt eventually. I just don't know when, where, and that type of shit.
You mentioned that you and your wife have been together for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
I really want to, because that's another aspect of some of the stuff that we talk about on the show is, relationships and the dynamics and all those kind of things. How do you see your relationship now versus like, how has it evolved? How have you found your place within that? Do you know what I mean? Because I know everybody, obviously, after 20 years, you definitely have gone through the fucking ringer a handful of times and managed to still stick it out and make it work. So how have you seen that kind of change and evolve?
Dude, I don't know. I lucked out, man. Me and my wife, we get along well. And Craig always used to ask me that, like when we used to train, he'd always like be picking my brain. I was like, dude, I never got like molested as a kid. I never cheated on my wife. She never cheated on me, as far as I know. My mom and dad are still married. You know what I mean? I don't have like that traumatic, dramatic, come home and your dad was fucking a neighbor type of thing. I didn't like, and like me and my wife, like my family, like my kids, my wife, me, like I'm like some of the only people I know that aren't on like antidepressants, antipsychotics. Like I had a couple aunts growing up that were like into the pharmaceuticals and stuff, and that like my parents, like it scared us. You know what I mean? Back in the day, like now everybody's on that shit, but back in the day, Ritalin was like a fucking rich people drug. Like, oh, my kids are on Ritalin. Oh, your kids are so bad. Yeah, you give them this. Like, well, we couldn't afford Ritalin. You know what I mean? I'm wearing my fucking uncle's shoes. We can't afford fucking Ritalin. You know what I mean? So that type of shit. But I don't know. Like me and my wife, I feel like we've always kind of like matured and like wanted the same shit at the same time. You know what I mean? Like I started partying when I was like 16. Like I had like the cool parents. You know what I mean? So I was drinking beer, smoking pot, partying. By the time I was 21 and like ready to get married, I mean, from 16 to 21, you're talking, 5 years of just getting burnt out on all that kind of shit. I was never really like a womanizer or anything like that. It was never really my cup of tea. And then like my wife's cool. She's chill. You know what I mean? And she's really supportive of the gym. And what's weird though, is you meet, and it's worse because like I'm super loud and obnoxious and my wife is super fucking quiet. So it seems fucking worse than it is when you compare us, you know what I mean? But she's just chill. So we've always got along. She's always helped me with the gym, like coming down there, helping me with this bullshit. She's just, like I've always had like a good relationship with we've argued and shit like every normal couple, but nothing like major catastrophic type of shit like that. So like I've never had any like huge, if she came home and she was like banging the neighbor or something, I'm sure that would change, but I've never had any, you know what I'm saying? On the 13th of next month, we'll be married 20 years. So
wow.
When she wanted to start having kids, I wanted to start having kids. When she wanted to be like, fuck Walmart, I want a new career. I wanted a new career. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's been able to, we're fucking making it work.
I mean, that's, I mean, first of all, just, phenomenal. I know, especially small business owners, finances, right? That tends to be like one of the biggest things that a lot of couples fight about, and number one reason for divorce and stuff like that. So to go from, hey, I've got 10, 15 years in at this business, this company, like I'm sure you weren't like, bagging groceries, but you had been there for a long time, and, like, hey, we got this new thing. It's unknown. I'm going to put everything we've got into this. I'm going to work my ass off into all this. And then to maintain that level of support and that relationship, I mean, that shit's hard, man. I know for me, there was dozens of nights I'd come home like, hey, waking up at 4:30 because you got that first class in the morning and you got the last class at night. And it's like, oh, hey, so-and-so had a question about this. It took me an extra 45 minutes to clean. It's 9:30 at night and I'm just getting home. And she's like, but when you've got that great relationship and you can, that's supportive of each other and you want the same things and you're talking and communicating, it takes those little things to make it all work.
Well, in the beginning, like those first 3 years, that was probably the roughest part on our marriage, just because like I feel like just the stress of running that business kind of sucked my personality out of me. I was just constantly worrying fucking 24 hours a day. But like she and I worked together too. Like we worked together at Walmart. We worked in the same department. And it was like, you know, it's like when you're bitching about somebody at work, because that's what I always used to say about like with Walmart. It's like when someone starts bagging on their ex-wife. Yeah, that fucking bitch, or their ex-husband. Oh, he had a little dick. Well, you fucking were married to him for 20 years. He was cool then. Like, you know what I mean? You take all that shit with a grain of salt. Yeah, whatever. You were a fucking angel. You didn't do nothing wrong. You made dinner every night. You fucking had candles going in a bath. I'm sure you did. Yeah, fuck off. I don't believe you. But when someone bitches about Walmart, believe them. That place is the fucking devil. You know what I mean? And we worked together. So we had the same bosses. And like, so like that fucking angst of hating work. And like, we were going through the same shit. So I think that helped too. Like we were both grinding and she knew like how hard I would, cause she was fucking exhausted too. Like we would go to work. Go ahead. Sorry.
Did she have like a similar childhood growing up as well? Did she kind of grow up poor as well, or?
No, so Paula's family's Mormon as well. And her parents had her mom had her when she was like, I think 40 or 41. So
wow.
Paula's parents, they weren't like rich by no means, but like by the time she came along, she was the only one in the house. And then her dad was like retired from the Navy. Her mom worked. So like they were able to spend more time and money on her because she, you know, all the other kids were gone. So she comes from a really good, like she has a good mom and dad. Her dad passed away last year, but her mom's still alive. And they've always treated me like gold. Like she didn't have like no childhood trauma or any of that shit either. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I lucked out. Like I got a wife that's like not crazy. You know what I mean? So the more and more like you deal with people,
me too.
You know what I mean? You get to see like,
me too.
We did too. Yeah. Ben and I both same experience over here on this side too.
Yeah.
100%.
They're not gonna see this, are they? Fucking.
My wife totally watches it.
Yeah, they both watch this show. We love them. They love. Yeah, it's all good. Hopefully, right? We're crossing our fingers. We might have to edit this out, but.
No, and it's like when you get like that whole best friend, and like they, you know, she just knows me. Like she knows when I'm in a good mood, in a bad mood, and like, she, you know what I mean? I don't have nothing bad to say.
That's awesome, dude. What about kids? Your kids are getting older, and how old are they now?
18 and 15. My daughter's a senior and my son's a sophomore.
Yeah, dude. So that like you're transitioning now into that next part of life where they're going to start leaving and they start doing their own thing. And how does that feel like? What are you feeling when that stuff start happening?
I mean, I'm not too worried about it. My daughter went to Salt Lake yesterday with a fucking group of boys, and I found out what restaurant she was and figured out I could be there in about 17 minutes if I had to be. So it's weird, man. It's fucking weird.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, it's super fucking weird. She's like, oh, were you checking on me? And I was like, no, I just was wondering the name of the restaurant. I happened to Google it, put it in my maps, and it's 17 minutes away.
He's just sitting in the car waiting.
No, it's weird though, but it's weird like listening to my parents over the years, the shit that they say and like that type of thing about like worrying about your kids. And like, I mean, it's terrifying just to let your kids go out and, you know, drive to fucking Salt Lake on the freeway with some fucking dudes you don't know. And like, but I mean, she's 18, she's an adult. She graduated early. Like she's a good kid, but I mean, it's just fucking another thing to worry about, man. I don't know how to explain it. You know, it's like,
it's so hard, dude. Cause Asher's going to be 19 this year. And what I've had to learn, because all of our girls are in their 20s doing their thing and everything like that. And it's like, at some point I had to make the conscious decision where I had to stop worrying. I had to stop that dynamic of stressing about every single different, what if scenario in order to try to keep them safe. So then at any given point, I know that I'm 17 minutes away from wherever they're at, right? I can get to them. I can save them. I can help them in case whatever's coming up. And I was just driving myself crazy with it, just insane over it. What really triggered it was our daughters went to Scotland during COVID. So my oldest daughter, she was a senior in college, and she got a opportunity to do like her last semester of school over there in Scotland. And it was a great opportunity. It was a really cool thing. And, when she finally got it accepted for it, we were like, well, it's not still happening because obviously you can't leave the country right now. And she's like, oh, no, we're still going to do it. And I'm like, the fuck you are, but you can't do anything about it. And so it's just like sitting there with all of that anxiety, all of that fear, all of those what if scenarios, and not being able to do fuck all about it. And I consciously like just had to get to the point where I was like, I can choose to spend the next, the remainder of my life as these kids are out doing their thing, becoming themselves and living their lives, stressing about everything, or I couldn't. I could choose not to do that. And I've chosen not to do that. And it's crazy, Keith, because what happened was it opened up the space for me to actually start, like you talk about wanting to be able to train as a black belt and finding the time and all these kind of things. Like just the freedom that I felt from no longer stressing and being afraid all the time about what they were doing. It opened up space inside of me to start to get real curious about what I wanted to be doing with my life, what I wanted to be focusing on, how I wanted to start stretching and growing and expanding and kind of pushing myself outside of that comfort zone, strictly because I wasn't so hyper focused in this fucking bubble of anxiety and fear all the time about how I was going to keep my kids safe. Because obviously you can't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing is you can't. Well, what's funny is my mom, I'm laying in my hotel out in San Diego, and my mom calls me. She's like, are you home? I was like, no, I'm not home. She's like, oh, but you're safe. Yeah, I just saw on the Toole 411, there was a big-ass wreck on I-80. She's like, well, where are you at? I go, I'm in San Diego. She's like, God damn, you're in San Diego? What are you doing? Like, she's worried about me crashing on I-80, and I'm 1,000 miles away, you know what I mean? So she's like, what the hell? I'm always out on the weekends going to tournaments and stuff. But yeah, my mom will still call and like check on me to see if I'm all right, or if I'm traveling, I'll call her and be like, hey mom, I'm good. I'm here. I made it back home. But I don't think that'll ever go away. But that's like the what would be the word? Like the new thing in life that like, it's just new. And I know it's like, I gotta have to deal with, even like dealing with boyfriends and all that kind of bullshit. It's just like, that's just part of having kids, And like, I have really good kids, but it's like I have a daughter and I have a son, and it's not just their two genders, but like they're just completely fucking different, man. Night and day. My son walks around like there's fucking reggae music playing in his head all day, and then my daughter's worried about what she's got, already stressing about what she's gonna wear for her graduation dance. You know what I mean? It's like that shit's 4 months away. Like they're just completely fucking different. Like it's strange. You know what I mean? But that's like I said, that was yesterday. Yeah, I'm going to go to Salt Lake. I'm going to go have Korean food with my friends because they didn't go to school yesterday because of Martin Luther King Day. So yeah, I'm going to go to my friends and all right. Yeah, sure. Have a good time. But I accidentally fucking put that restaurant into maps. So
I'm gonna guess though.
It wasn't me. Say that again.
There's probably a lot of the guys that are hanging out with her that are like, so what's your dad do? Oh, he trains fighters and he owns a jiu-jitsu school. And like, oh, noted. Like, all right, well, keep that. I'll jot that down for later, right? That's an important bit of information.
Yeah. Yeah. My kids have crazy parents. My wife works for the Department of Agriculture in the medical cannabis department. And then their dad teaches people how to fight. So their mom sells pot and their dad beats people up. So they have like a weird, they're not your normal kids in the suburbs. You know what I mean?
Right. Do your kids train? Did they train in jiu-jitsu as well?
Both my kids trained when they were real little. My son got to a yellow and white belt. I kind of burned him out, but I'm not just saying this because he's my son, but my son's probably like the top 3 to 5 kickboxers that I have in the gym. He's unfortunately he's taller than I'm 6'1". My son's taller than me. He's got me by about that much now. He's tall, lanky. He's a really good kickboxer. A couple years back, he just started getting into kickboxing and liked it and got good at it. Has a good frame for it. And I got a couple of kids, Noah, Mason, and this other kid, Eli. What's fucked up in Utah, and I don't know why, but in Utah, you can't do MMA and you can't kickbox until you're 18. Now, you can start boxing when you're like 45 pounds. Like Ogden has a really, really like, they have a good like Mexican boxing culture in Ogden.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, there's hundreds of kids under the age of 10 up there that box every weekend. But in Utah, you can't do that. So they're working with the commission. Because the argument is like, if in Idaho, you can do MMA and kickbox. California, Nevada, Arizona, like you're putting the kids in Utah at a disadvantage, you know what I mean? If they can't have any competitions until they turn 18, you know what I'm saying? So this summer, I'm working with one of the fight promoters in Arizona to try to get a couple of those high school kids some kickboxing matches. Because I could go to Idaho or I could go to Arizona, but I'm from Arizona. My family's down there.
Yeah.
I would way rather go down there and try to get him some. But yeah, my son trains. He kickboxes, and then my daughter does kickboxing here and there, and then my wife trains as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. So a dangerous little family.
Yeah, but we're nice. We're only angry when provoked.
Keith, this has been great, dude. It's
Yeah.
been so good to catch up with you. Man, I really, really appreciate it.
Hell yeah.
This is
And
awesome.
we're going to share everything in the show notes as far as, because it's Toole Martial Arts Academy. Do you guys have anything coming up that you want to shout out or promote or anything like that?
We just have I have a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments scheduled, and then there's actually fights this Friday. So 2 of the guys that Derek might fight will fight this Friday. So, and again, it's MMA math. People could get hurt, blah, 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 blah. But we're looking for, I think April 11th is the card we're trying to get on. And depends on what happens Friday. We're trying to get Derek a 145-pound championship fight for Fierce. But it just kind of depends on who wins on Friday, who doesn't win, that type of thing. So got a bunch of fights scheduled for the year. Going to Vegas in September for the Worlds, trying to go to Vegas again for the No-Gi Worlds. Just traveling and fighting and just trying to, and that's the thing, like I was saying earlier, just trying to expose these small town hillbillies to like competing with everybody, you know what I mean? Going to Idaho. We're going to go to Idaho in, I think March. We're going to go to Idaho, Cedar City, just travel around, try to find the best matches and just keep fighting, keep doing our thing. Trying to get my own spot. That's kind of what I'm working on this year. So try to finance and have my own gym built. So
There you go.
I'm not paying rent anymore. Because at first I was like, man, I don't want to. If I buy a building here in Tooele, then I'll be stuck in Tooele. What if my kids go and get married? But my parents are, in their mid 60s, so I'm not gonna go anywhere until my parents pass, in case I got to take care of them or whatever. So
Yeah.
I'm planning on setting my roots here until my mom and dad, fucking go across the Rainbow Bridge, and then depending on what my kids do, you know what I'm saying, and just stay training, man. I want to try to go out to Tennessee to see you and Brandon. That was one of my goals this year too, is to try to make it out there. I'm just so busy all the time. So I was we were actually looking, was it yesterday or the day before, for some jiu-jitsu tournaments out there. Because that's kind of what I do, is like we kind of turn like a jiu-jitsu tournament into like a vacation. Like we do that in Vegas. We'll go out like on a Wednesday, like, because the world tournament is 4 days. So depending on whether you're, white belt through black belt, your age might be Wednesday, might be Thursday, might be Friday. The finals are on Saturdays. Zach lives down in Vegas, so we go down there and, spend the weekend down there and hang out. And that's what's cool about jiu-jitsu, is it's like, I mean, if you're an actor, you're never going to meet Robert De Niro. If you're a basketball player, you're never going to bump into Karl Malone. But like Saturday, I'm standing next to Cole Abate, Gio Martinez, Boogie Martinez, some of the best grapplers in the world. You know what I mean? That's what's crazy too. I've met some of my idols like Jeremy Horn, because Jeremy Horn lives here in Utah. And Jeremy Horn, before I die, that's one of my things. Like, Jeremy Horn is the fucking man. Like, he's one of the best fighters. Like, he gets no respect, and it fucking grinds my gears, man. And it's like when we go to nobody's earlier to the fights than me, but I walk in, Jeremy Horn sitting in the corner, minding his own business. I like picking his brain, chatting him up. But I've met, my idols in the sport. I met Pat Miletich was one of my idols. I met him up at LFA. Super cool, down to earth dude. Just all the fighters. Chuck Liddell. Court was trained by Chuck Liddell on the Ultimate Fighter. We all went to dinner together. Jake Shields, Kenny Florian. Like here in Salt Lake, Ramsey Nigem runs a gym. So if you would have told me 15 years ago that I would have Jeremy Horn's phone number in my phone, I'd call you a liar to your face. But, you know what I mean? It's just like, chase your dreams, boys. That's what I try to tell everybody, man. If some fucking ignorant, poor white trash dude like me can, because that's the thing. That's what everybody, what's this? Dude, there's no secret, man. Have a dream, work hard, have a good work ethic. And because that's what trips me out too. Like with my kids is it's like, they think that I got everything figured out. It's like,
right.
I'm just trying to figure this shit out like everybody else, man. Hopefully when you go to that fridge, there's food in there, but
right.
Yeah, man, I'm just trying to do my thing. And those are just some of the goals that I have set for this year. So we'll see what happens. Try to keep everybody healthy.
We'll be excited if you make it out here to Tennessee, man. It'll be good to see you. Ben just bought the gym here, so you can come out. We got a place to roll. It's really, really cool, dude.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, man. Thank you so much. Don't we're gonna push stop, but don't jump off yet, okay?
Okay.
And like I said, we'll share everything. So everybody listening, you'll be able to find Keith and all of his info in this gym, Toole Martial Arts Academy, located in Twilla, Utah. We're going to put all that information down in the show notes. Go follow them on social and all that other kind of shit. Because as you can tell, he's a badass.
Total badass.
Thanks for listening to this episode of bravemendare. If you haven't yet, take a moment and subscribe to our channel, click that little notification bell, and check out some of these other clips. Last but not least, we'd really appreciate it if you sent this podcast to somebody else. Share it with a friend, share it with a buddy, and don't hesitate to reach out. The conversations that we have on the podcast are meant to inspire you, but also we want to hear what it brings up for you. Whether you share it in the comment, send us an email, or call us up. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode.